Tonight, unable to cash in on curbside pickups.
We've had to lay off all of our staff, so we just don't have the manpower.
While some continue to lose out, we'll show you how others are cashing in as COVID-19 restrictions continue to ease.
It's very difficult for me right now because I'm alone.
Grief in isolation. We check in on two Toronto men who lost everything in the Iranian plane crash in January. How COVID is compounding their suffering. And a glimmer of hope. Life could soon bounce back to a bit of normalcy. The steps in the sporting world that may make you smile tonight. Good evening, I'm Chris Glover. There was another step today towards loosening lockdown restrictions. Retail stores with street entrances are now allowed to offer curbside pickup. It comes as the province's daily number of new cases of COVID-19 continued on a steady downward trend. But as Angelina King shows us, today's changes are still not enough for some struggling stores.
We've got their order already packed up and ready to go. We come outside, we pop it in the bin, go back inside.
Leah Isles says the entire process at her gift shop is contactless. The customer pays ahead of time, calls when they arrive, and there's one employee in the store at a time.
So far, so good. You know, we've had a lot of orders come through after posting on social media.
Since closing both of her locations in Toronto, Isles turned her attention online, offering shipping discounts and porch delivery.
Doing what we could to adapt and get people to continue shopping with us and supporting small business.
Something that's important to these three customers.
You know, it's really tough for them, so if we can do curbside pickups, we're really happy to do that and try and give them as much business as we can.
But that doesn't work for everyone. The co-owner of this clothing store says while online sales are doing better than expected, pickup just isn't financially feasible, especially with 4 locations in Toronto.
There's only 2 of us running Coal Miner's Daughter. We've had to lay off all of our staff, so we just don't have the manpower to sustain that business model.
Pickup is now permitted after garden centers, hardware, and safety supply stores were allowed to fully open over the weekend. But if you open, will they show up?
I think it's too early. I think that already people haven't particularly been taking it seriously.
I think it's a good idea, but make sure we do it in a very cautious way.
I think it's way too soon for the retail stores.
We have to be smart about it, but we have to open up.
This public health professor says the timing is right. Vivek Goel says from a health, economic, and social perspective, the benefits outweigh the consequences as long as people follow distancing rules and businesses implement proper safety measures.
It's a very careful approach. And then finally, we also have to look at preparing the population, the public, for getting back out there.
He says that means telling healthy people not to be afraid if you go outside, as long as people are following those simple yet effective rules, washing your hands, not touching your face, and staying that safe distance from others. And Health Canada has said wearing a reusable mask can add some protection. Angelina King, CBC News, Toronto.
As some businesses get back to it, the hit to the provincial government's bottom line has been tallied up, and it's brutal.
To my knowledge and to my reading, this is by far and away the largest deficit we've ever generated in Ontario.
Ontario's financial watchdog says the deficit will quadruple to $41 billion this fiscal year. The pandemic has resulted in a sharp decline in government revenue and an increase in spending to fight the outbreak. Today, the Premier didn't rule out raising taxes to help make up the difference. Premier Doug Ford appears to have broken COVID-19 physical distancing measures, and it's causing some confusion around what exactly the guidelines are right now. He admitted that for Mother's Day yesterday, he had his 4 daughters at his house. 2 of them don't live there.
Well, the girls came over. There was 6 of us, a direct family. None of the husband, boyfriends, no one came, just themselves.
Ontario's COVID-19 website advises against contact outside someone's household. Asked for more clarity about how the Premier is interpreting the rules and how the rest of us should, and Ford's office says they expect Ontarians to use their best judgment when interacting with individuals from outside their household. Now to a tribute of loss outside a long-term care home in Mississauga. 50 residents have died at Camilla Care Community Home. That's nearly a quarter of the COVID-19 deaths in Peel Region. Kelda Yoon shows us what families are doing to make sure their loved ones aren't forgotten.
It's almost like it's not real.
Alan Guy and his granddaughter Riley are in mourning. Alan's mother Mary died a week ago from COVID-19. A cross in her memory is among 50 that stand outside the home.
It was hard because I never got to say goodbye to her.
For 6 weeks, I never got to see her. And I still never got to see her when she passed away. So this is as much closure as I'm going to get.
He says it really hit him when the crosses were put up.
I stood back afterwards and I'm thinking to myself, that's a lot of people.
Innes Ingram is part of the Facebook group Families of Camilla Care that set up the memorial.
It's kind of united the families.
His mom, Catherine, lives on the 3rd floor.
Your hair looks lovely.
She has tested negative, but he's worried more than 160 residents have contracted the virus.
We as the general public get kind of desensitized to seeing numbers and statistics. This gave a visual representation to people that hopefully draws awareness to the seriousness of COVID.
Peel Region's interim medical officer of health says steps were taken early in the outbreak.
It was one of the first homes that we did broad testing in, contact tracing, isolations. The reality is that COVID-19 is a tenacious disease.
Sienna Senior Living, the facility's parent company, says the home has enough staff and PPE and is actively retesting residents. It also says it's keeping families informed. But while he has praise for all the frontline workers, Alan says communication has been a big issue.
We didn't even know she was in the hospital. We had no calls whatsoever. Sometimes I feel like it's so secretive.
For Innes, the outbreak exposes larger systemic problems.
SARS was 15 years ago, so the potential for something like this happening is public knowledge, but yet it's still reaching these epic proportions.
Kelda Yoon, CBC News, Mississauga.
In Toronto, the city is reporting its first COVID-19 death of a person who had used a shelter.
Sadly, on May 8th, a man in his 50s, who was a resident at Dixon Hall Schoolhouse, died in hospital.
City officials say there are 9 people experiencing homelessness in hospital with COVID-19. For people trying to mourn the deaths of loved ones, the isolation brought on by the pandemic can make their grieving that much harder. Tonight, we revisit 2 Toronto fathers who lost their families in the Iranian plane crash in January that killed more than 60 Canadians. Talia Ricci shares their pain and the question that still tortures them.
It's so difficult to stay in that home and facing those memories.
Memories are what pushed Vahid Imami to move out of the home he lived in with his daughter Sophie and wife Sahand before they died. But still, he takes comfort remembering the good times.
Every time I came home from my job, she was running to me and called me daddy, daddy, and hugged me. One of those things was I miss his dad.
The father says he recently helped start an association with others who lost loved ones on the flight. Their mission is to help raise money for the families that need support, ensure the victims are remembered, and continue to push for answers.
This is the only thing that makes me alive. It's very difficult for me right now because I'm alone.
For me, by myself, my situation gets worse.
The isolation brought on by the pandemic has also been hard on Shaheen Moghadam. He lost his wife Shakiba and son Rothstein in the crash.
I'm just driving, maybe 3 hours, 2 hours, 3 hours, just driving in the street.
How come you're going for these long drives? Does it help you clear your mind?
When I'm driving, then I have to concentrate on the road, so then I forget.
Moghadam says his birthday last week was especially difficult. He went through 2 tanks of gas that day. He's been sharing his journey on social media. On top of his family, he misses his friends right now, too.
Even with the pandemic, they came to me and brought me a cake and candles. After they left, then It was so bad.
The Canadian government says it's still working to uncover what caused the tragedy. Meanwhile, families are calling on airlines to stay out of Iranian airspace until there's more transparency from Tehran.
And every night almost, I play with Rostin's Lego because everybody knows he has thousands of Legos and he loves to play with the Lego.
The father says in between moments of occupying his time, he's still tortured by this question.
It's our right to know why. Why?
Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
Now to a CBC News exclusive. A private landlord is being scrutinized for its treatment of tenants, some of whom are in Toronto. The United Nations is accusing Achilles Residential of doing questionable renovations just so tenants can be charged higher rents. John Lancaster has the story.
This one, facade restoration update.
Howard Druckman thumbs through dozens of notices he's received recently from Achilles, a Swedish-based corporation that owns the Toronto building he lives in. 38 so far, each warning of an impending disruption due to maintenance or renovations.
Shutting down heat, shutting down water, coming into the suites, checking fire alarms, those kinds of things. So it's been very interruptive.
Achilles owns about 3,500 rental units in Toronto, 3,900 in Montreal. The UN report hasn't been made public, but Leilani Farha says she has concerns with the way Achilles operates.
Tenants told me that renovations would get so unruly that tenants felt that they were being sort of forced out. And once a unit is empty, much easier to raise that rent right up there.
Achilles has 60 days to respond to the report. It insists it only renovates vacant units and is upgrading housing stock.
Our business model is to provide better livings, and those buildings present opportunities that requires renovations and more investments to the buildings.
Some tenants complain that comes with a high cost for them too.
There was renovation going on outside, so the drilling was at my head. There was renovation going on the other side of our space because they were renovating a unit there. And then there was a renovation going on across the hall in the elevator.
The UN says Achilles isn't breaking any laws, but wants the federal government to ensure Canadians have access to adequate housing in a tight rental market. The government says it's reviewing the report and will work with provinces on the issue. John Lancaster, CBC News, Toronto.
Toronto police have seized millions of dollars worth of pure cocaine in a drug trafficking investigation dubbed Project Corridor.
61 kilograms of powder cocaine with a potential street value of $7.9 million. The cocaine would be stashed in residences, both condos and houses, primarily in North York, and would then be distributed to mid-level and ultimately street-level dealers.
Police also seized hundreds of thousands in cash, cars, and watches. They made 4 arrests and are on the hunt for 2 more suspects. They're still looking for 30-year-old Alan Jones Smith and 47-year-old Andrew Wilson, a.k.a. Drew Dazzle. The 4 men they have arrested are on house arrest and will appear in court next month.
So it's one player in the gymnasium at a time with one coach.
Now, right after the break, is professional sports finally returning to Toronto? Well, not quite, but we are getting closer. Greg Ross will walk us through it coming up. Plus,
some cool temperatures again tonight, so we do have a frost advisory in place. I'm meteorologist Colette Kennedy. It may be chilly, but the warm-up is in sight. I will give you all the details on temperatures that are going up towards 20 degrees. That's coming up after the break.
Welcome back. High Park reopened to the public today. It was closed on April 30th to avoid crowds gawking at the famous cherry blossoms. Despite today's reopening, people are still being asked to stick to trails, ravines, and other green spaces while maintaining physical distancing at the park. And many of the province's provincial parks are also reopened today. More than 500 are now welcoming visitors. The remaining 115 will open on Friday. Recreational activities will be limited to walking, hiking, biking, and bird watching. Beaches, camping areas, and playgrounds remain closed. But with snowflakes in the air again today, who's even thinking about beaches right now? Let's get Colette Kennedy in on the conversation. Colette, another chilly night.
Thanks, Chris. Here we are. That's right. After a little bit of light snow again this morning, mixing at times, I know. The warm-up is coming. We just have to wait a few more days. So tonight again, we do have this frost advisory in place with some chilly temperatures. I'll show you the regions in just a moment, but the city is included. We'll have sunshine through midweek, but temperatures still running below seasonal. And then towards Thursday, the next system's going to come in. We could see some significant rain actually as we go towards Thursday and into Friday, but at least by the end of the week, we will see a real warm up with our temperatures back to seasonal times, maybe even some of those highs a little bit above. These are the areas included in that frost advisory for tonight, with those temperatures in many cases, most in fact falling actually below freezing, but at least down to freezing. Interesting, when our average high at this time of year is almost 18 degrees, our average low right around 6. So we've just been way off the mark when today we were only up to 7 degrees. So yeah, we're missing more than 10 degrees there in terms of the daytime heat. But we do have this clearing trend tonight, and that's part of the reason we're going to be seeing some of this frost showing up once again. However, tomorrow morning, it does mean we begin with those clear skies, so we get the sunshine through the day. And on a very positive note, now we have over 14 and a half hours of daylight. The sun is getting up before 6 a.m. and staying up just past 8:30. So things are looking good in that regard when we can get the sunshine. A little bit of cloud cover into the afternoon, a few morning little flurries mixing possible for southwestern Ontario, but it's really eastern Ontario that'll see a little bit of light precipitation into the afternoon hours on Tuesday, and then high pressure builds in again. We get clear skies Tuesday night into Wednesday, which is lovely because it means full sun as we go through the day on Wednesday. The temperatures will warm up a little bit. This will be the next system, though, that's going to be moving in, bringing the wet weather as we go towards Thursday, but it's actually also going to be helping to push those temperatures up. So with some of that patchy frost tonight, -3 for you in Windsor, you should be at about 8 degrees for an average overnight low. And then your high should be closer to 20. I don't even know, why do I put them and make that comparison? Does it just make us feel bad? I hope not. 13 degrees. And after that morning issue, you'll have some sunshine there, so that looks good. -2 for Mississauga, -4 Hamilton, and in Markham as well. And again, we have that frost advisory, and tomorrow those temperatures will struggle to get to double digits. We may see a 10 popping up somewhere, but at least we're going to have quite a bit of sun, a little more towards southern parts of the Golden Horseshoe, a little more cloud cover there. There's the sunshine Wednesday, though, in that warm up I mentioned, so 13 degrees will feel a little better. Gets wet into Thursday, Friday. However, you are reading correctly, 21 degrees your high on Friday, and Chris, Saturday, even if we look through the holiday weekend, in fact, those temperatures upper teens to around 20 degrees. So warmer weather coming.
And we'll be ready for it. Thanks, Colette.
The weather update is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. Take advantage of special offers now. It's hard to stop a Trane.
A lot of people are also ready for the return of pro sports, and today 2 Toronto teams reopened practice facilities to players. Greg Ross now with a look at how long it might take before you get to see them in action.
Clear it out, and an OB. This was March 9th, the last time the Raptors played a game. The league shut down 3 days later because of COVID-19, and players have been expected to be in isolation ever since. The team's training facility looked pretty quiet today, despite the fact players were allowed to return there for the first time.
So it's one player in the gymnasium at a time with one coach who will be distanced. The coach will still be wearing glove and masks and everything.
Raptors play-by-play announcer Eric Smith says the team is being very cautious with a limited reopening. But even if they are given the green light to resume full practices, it would be tough because half the team, including a number of key players, have left the country to go back to their homes.
Fred VanVleet's back down in Illinois. Lowry's in Philly.
But for those who are still here, this is a huge step up from the home workouts they've been limited to.
We've seen Serge Ibaka doing the videos running up and down the hallway of his condo. So they've been keeping in shape that way. But in terms of actually getting up shots and being on a court in some way, shape, or form, no, I don't think there's been a whole lot of that going on.
Just steps away from the Raptors training facility, BMO Field remains empty. But the team that calls the stadium home is also getting a return to limited workouts.
They're calling it a voluntary workout as opposed to a practice. So ultimately the decision is being left up to the players and if they feel safe to resume and if they are in the city.
Brady Reed, who covers TFC for the website wakethered.com, says the team is taking a similar approach to the Raptors reopening, which at this point is far more than other teams in the MLS.
As of right now, of the 3 Canadian MLS clubs, Toronto FC is the only club that has returned to training. So it's certainly a positive, but I think this is step one in a multi-step process.
Neither the NBA or MLS have a plan in place to restart their seasons, but something is in the works for Major League Baseball. The league would like to resume training next month and start their season on July 4th. Teams would likely play out of their spring training facilities, which means the Blue Jays would play their home games in Dunedin, Florida. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
After the break, today's Frontline Hero. Stick around for that, and we will be right back. For National Nursing Week, CBC Toronto is featuring the story of a nurse each night as part of our Frontline Heroes series. Today, meet Cheryl West here on the left. West is a registered practical nurse at Holland Bloorview Kids Rehabilitation Hospital. Her colleague, Felicia Lau, on the right, says West is trying to ensure her colleagues don't have sore ears after wearing their masks for extended periods of time. In an email, Lau told us West has been spending her own time and resources to measure our heads and sew buttons onto headbands, which makes each one completely personalized. I've been wearing mine, and wow, what a difference it makes, she says. I can confidently say that she has helped us all focus less on our painful ears and more on our clients and their families at Holland Bloorview during these unprecedented times. Great job, Cheryl, and thank you so much, Lau, for sending that in. And that is our show for tonight. We leave you with a look at the heart of our city. The CN Tower lit up in purple, showcasing support for hospitality workers affected by job losses due to COVID-19. Toronto joining other cities across North America as part of the #HospitalityStrong campaign. Have a great night.